Of Genesis, God creates two people, Adam and Eve, and from them we are all descended. We all inherit the sinful nature from them, and they had at the time two boys, an unknown number of girls, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. God places a mark on Cain and says, anyone who kills you, I will avenge you. I'll put this mark on you so the world will avoid you. Cain has a bunch of children. Cain is a guy who knows how to respond inappropriately, right? I mean, he murdered his brother because God liked his brother's offering better, because he offered it with a better heart. So, you know what you should do about that? Is you should beat a man to death with a rock, right? So what does Cain teach his children? We learn first by watching and second by listening. And anytime you say, do what I say and not what I do, they're not listening to what you say anyway. They're watching you. And Cain's children pick up the habits. And one of Cain's children named Lamech says, in Genesis 4, he says, I have killed a man for striking me. And if the Lord would have avenged Cain, surely he would avenge me 77 times. That's a little bit of ego right there. That's a little bit of arrogance to think that God would avenge you 77 times when he was the one who responded disproportionately. So what? Somebody hit you. You end a life because someone disrespected you. You see, there's a reason why God gives us the laws that he gives us, right? Right? Do you realize that in the Garden of Eden, there weren't that many laws? There's basically two, as far as I can tell. Well, three, I guess, really. Worship the Lord. Eat of the fruit of the ground. And don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. 3 laws. Do you know why our society has so many more laws in the Garden of Eden? Because the sin has increased exponentially since then, right? Why do you need laws? To restrain the evil within society, right? So why does God give us his laws? Because God's mean? Because God's oppressive? No, because he knows sin, and sin keeps increasing. And the more that sin increases, the more that we find ways to disrespect and devalue and do all these things we shouldn't be doing. He lays out a law and says, okay, let's address this because you need to know. So one of the laws that God gave in Leviticus 24 is he says that there should be an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And many times we take that and we don't understand it, right? We take that to mean I can respond and get vengeance. But that verse, or that section of verses actually says, vengeance is the Lord's, not yours. So what does it mean? It means that if somebody attacks you and they poke out your eye, the only punishment you can give them is to take their eye in return. You can't kill them. You can't sell their children into slavery. You can't abuse them and burn down their house and cause them to starve. If somebody chips your tooth, then they lose their tooth. They don't lose their whole family and their livelihood and their dignity as a person. If someone speaks ill of you, you do not destroy them. If someone strikes you, you do not destroy them. If somebody harms you, you do not seek their destruction. If you respond, you have to respond appropriately. Why does God have to put that in there? Because when we are harmed, the last thing that we want to do is respond appropriately. Right? Right? Oh, you hurt my feelings. I will destroy your life. God is trying to guide us away from that. There's a lot of people who when they're insulted, they'd rather grab a stick and beat them to death than they would just accept the insult and move on, right? 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 There's a lot of people who overreact. And make no mistake, that is exactly what Haman is doing here. Haman overreacts. Mordecai insults him, but Mordecai is not trying to insult him. Why would Mordecai not bow down to Haman? Well, for a reason we're never told, King Xerxes raises up Haman and commands that everyone bow down to him. But a good Jew puts God above man's laws. And no good, devout Jew would ever bend the knee to anyone but God. Because it's an act of submission. It's an act of lowering. It's an act of honor that the Jews felt only God deserved. Right? You understand what I'm saying here? And didn't they just lose their homeland because they didn't honor God the way that he deserved? Didn't they turn against God and do the very things that he said don't do? Didn't he mistreat the people? Didn't they mistreat the people of God and mistreat the worship of God? So the last thing that he wanted to do was to further insult a God who let them face the consequences of it the last time they did it. So he doesn't bow. He does not bend his knee. And Haman is insulted. And how does Haman respond? He is not satisfied to only kill Mordecai. But he comes up with a plan to kill every Jew in the Persian Empire. Can anybody say this morning that that is a bit of an overreaction? Right? How many times have you mistreated a whole family because of what somebody did to you? Haman gets insulted and responds with genocide. We often respond with shunning. Somebody insults me. It's not their husband's fault. It's not their wife's fault. It's not their children's fault. It's not their siblings' fault. It's not their cousin's fault. But everyone with that last name, I will avoid, I will shun, I will refuse to love. Right? You know, if Adam had a last name, we would all have his last name. And Adam insulted God. Aren't you glad God did not say, I will shun everyone with his last name? Why do people overreact? It's really simple. Luke 6:45 says, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart. And an evil man does evil things out of the evil stuff stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. What we do comes from one place only. It is our heart. Why do we overreact? Because of what's in our heart. It's simple, and we hate that it's simple because simplicity cuts out excuses. Right? For Haman, his heart is full of two things: racism and pride. The racism goes back to the fact that it says he's an Agagite. King Agag, was a man who was defeated by King Saul in the Bible and executed by the prophet Samuel. He was the leader of the Philistines, and the Philistines have fought against the Jews by this time for 1,000 years. And guess what? They're still fighting the Jews. We just don't call them Philistines anymore. We call them Palestinians. is there's a deep-seated racism that you inherit sometimes, right? If all you hear is that this group of people has all of these negative attributes, and that's all that you hear growing up, and then the only times you encounter them is across a field and they have a bunch of swords and you have a bunch of swords, do you think that opinion is likely to change? You think you're going to go, wait, before we fight, let's put a table in the middle of this, and your commander comes over, and my commander, let's just have some tea and sit down and chat, talk about our kids, right? No. I don't want to get to know you. I want to fight you. I want to kill you. I want to destroy you. And the Philistines and their hatred of the Jewish people gets passed on for generation after generation after generation, and nothing changes it. And so Haman finds out that he's a Jew, and bam, that hatred that has been embedded in his heart is flushed out. And the second thing is his pride. He is a man who craves honor. He's a man who craves being respected. He is a man who's worked hard and done who knows what to get the king, the emperor Xerxes, to elevate him up to higher than the other nobles and officials. And then he commands that everyone in the capital should bow down to Haman. Oh, if there is something that's going to puff up your pride, it is when someone else says, everyone bow when they see you. Imagine trying to be humble when everywhere you walk, people are bowing and going, oh, you're amazing. I'm like, oh, don't stop. Keep going. Oh, I love this. This is great. Yes, I am amazing. How did you know? How did you know how amazing I am? I've been waiting for y'all to bow to me for forever. My wife still doesn't do it. I'm trying to train her. It doesn't work. But I have children. There's still hope. Anybody who craves respect can never handle an insult to their pride. So why do we overreact? His heart was full of pride and racism. Our heart's full of things too, right? For some of us, it is also pride. It is also pride. You know that the root of discouragement is pride? We don't think about that, do we? The first sin in the world is pride. Because Satan says to Eve, you can be as God, and that is what she clung to. I can be the equal to God. And most other sins, if not all of them, really are rooted within pride. Discouragement is in pride. Why? Because I feel like the whole world should revolve around me and everyone else should change their behavior to make me feel better. That's pride. And then we're also too proud to change our behavior to make someone else feel better, right? Right? You know anybody who's depressed and discouraged who's showing love and kindness and generosity to other people? No. Because when you're depressed and you're discouraged, what do? You hold yourself off from the world, you shut off any outside things, and then the only one you're left with is yourself and the voice of Satan in your life saying, no one cares, so you shouldn't care about them. Discouragement is rooted in pride. Now, don't we all get discouraged? Yes, because we all have pride. We all have pride. For others, it's jealousy. You ever seen anybody blow something out of proportion because what they're really upset about is the fact that this person has something that they don't have? Right? I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be if you don't have kids and someone else has kids, or if you don't have a spouse and they have a spouse, or if your car is a 72 Pinto and the other person's is a 2017 Escalade. I mean, whatever the thing is, we can be jealous of anybody, right? Your wife is nicer than mine. Mine beats me with a stick every night, or people seem to like you and no one seems to care about me, and I'm envious of your friends. I'm envious of whatever it is. I wish I covet this thing that you have that I don't have, and I can't stop thinking about it when I think about you. So when the littlest thing happens, I blow it out of proportion because it's not about that little thing. It's about the fact that I am envious of you. For some people, it's bitterness. Some people do everything they do out of bitterness. Some people have that mentality, right? If I'm not happy, ain't nobody going to be happy. It doesn't matter what it is. Someone goes out of their way to decorate the church for Advent, and I wouldn't have done that. I hate that color. I wouldn't. Are you going to help? No. But I will sure let the bitterness of my heart spill over as I criticize every single thing else in this world. Why? Because you're not criticizing it because of what it is. You're criticizing it because you don't even love yourself, and you can't stand the idea of somebody else being happy. What is it that is in our hearts? What is it that is so deep-rooted within us that we cannot respond appropriately? Your spouse goes, I have asked you 112 times to fold the laundry. Why are you not folding the laundry? You are worthless. You are an idiot. You cannot even handle a simple instruction. You are nothing. You have no value. You are lucky I married you because no one else would have married you because you're too stupid for anybody else to marry. Is it the laundry? No. It's the bitterness. It's the pride. It's the ego. It's the, I want to have this world be the way I want this world to be. That's why people leave church so often. Not always, but that's one of the reasons people leave church. Because I want this church to be the way I want this church to be for me. And they very rarely do anything to make the church something that can serve someone else. We have things in our heart that we don't want to be honest about, do we? We don't want to be honest about, do we? Right? How many people say to their spouse, I really want to be angry with you, but the truth is I've watched my parents have a bad marriage, and this is spilling over into this right now. No. We're just going to insult and tear them to 1,000 pieces and then somehow go, oh, do you forgive me? Yeah, I forgive you. Yeah, it's all okay. No, it's not. Because they have memories. They're not stupid. They'll remember it. Why do you think God has to say, love keeps no record of wrongs? Because he knows that we will keep a record of wrong. Not just in our marriages, but with our children, with our parents, with our preachers, with our teachers, with our neighbors, with our friends, with our bosses and our coworkers, with every single person that we meet. We have the tendency to keep a long, long list. This is not just about Haman. There's somebody else in the scripture too. His name is Mordecai. Haman finds out that Mordecai has disrespected him. But you know what? Mordecai gets even worse news. Haman finds out he was disrespected. Mordecai finds out that he and all of his people are going to be murdered. Don't you think that's a little bit worse than finding out you've been insulted? Right? Don't you think that the situation has escalated a little bit? Right? And don't you think that that should be something more dire and more pressing than the fact that you have been insulted? Right? So if Haman blows up about the smaller thing, shouldn't Mordecai have reacted catastrophically? But what does Mordecai do? He grieves and he fasts. He fasts. He denies himself comfortable clothing. He denies himself any respect because everyone's going to want to avoid the guy standing there with ashes all over his head and in sackcloth. He denies himself food and water. He denies himself. Why? To seek God. Mordecai finds out news worse than you can even imagine, and he responds by denying himself and seeking God. He takes his sorrow and he uses it as motivation to seek the intervention of God into that situation. Why? Why would you react like that? And it says the other Jews did the same thing. The other Jews all throughout the capital and everywhere that anybody found out about it, they fasted. Why? Why seek prayer instead of vengeance? Why seek God instead of organizing a defense? Why humble yourself to God instead of standing up to Haman? Because what was in their heart? Because everything that we do comes from our heart. And their heart was full of a desire for God. Their heart was pure. Their heart was humble. And they knew, I can't face this on my own. So I will seek the Lord. Who do you think God will be more inclined to help, Haman or Mordecai? See, they were motivated by their relationship with God more than they were motivated by their love of themselves. We love ourselves, don't we? Sometimes we love ourselves more than our children, more than our spouses, more than God, more than His church, more than those who are lost and dying and shattering their lives. And Mordecai throws down himself, not before man, before God. We all face situations in our life, right? We all have arguments with our spouses. And until they figure out we're right, we'll keep having arguments with our spouses. We all have bosses that undervalue us. Our brothers and sisters in Christ who seem so caught up in their own lives they don't have time for us. We have a hard time paying bills. We have people who say rude things to us. Right? How we react is determined by one thing only. What's in our heart? What is in our heart? So this morning, the question we have to admit to ourselves and ask is, what's in our heart? What's in our heart? What's in our heart that keeps us from praying with people at the altar? What's in our heart that makes it to where we don't invest ourselves in the ministry of the church? What's in our heart that makes it to where we have no clue which one of our neighbors is a Christian or isn't a Christian because we just haven't even taken the time to say hi? What's in our heart that we choose entertainment over evangelism every single time? What's in our heart and the conversations that we have that nobody outside them, us, and God will ever know? What's in our heart when we have the conversation in our head but we don't actually say it out. God is never going to do anything different in your life if you don't let him be the king of your heart. Amen? You understand me this morning? You understand me? If you are waiting for God to change your circumstances, you will wait till you die. Because God couldn't care two licks about how you feel about what other people have done. He cares about you. And he cares about them. And he cares about you and them more than you could even fathom in your mind. Because he died for you. He didn't die for your feelings. He didn't die for your pride. He didn't die so that you could overreact to every insult you have ever faced. He did not die for your self-righteousness or mine. He died for us. And he loves us. This morning, Valerie, could you come and play something? This morning, we need to be honest. Think about the last conflict you had. Just be honest. God already knows, and I am not going to judge you. Think about the last conflict you had. Do you feel like you responded in a way that glorified the Lord? Did you say, I'm not going to fight back, I'm going to humble myself before God and seek him? Or did you put your pride and yourself before them? What is in your heart? You are not going to get your heart right with God sitting there. You're only going to get it in an honest conversation with the Lord. And what better place than letting down your pride and getting your butt out of the seat and walking to the altar? Or is your pride too heavy to help you stand? Wherever you're at, this morning what we need is a change of heart. So let's come and talk to the Lord about it.